There we go.
How do I get this up?
Oh, yeah, I'll take care of that.
Thank you.
Okay.
What's that window?
Is it a little bit chilly? Yeah, I'll get that. You can focus on your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. Like I said, my name is Riley. And today I'm going to talk about my internship with Clemson Baseball. So just a brief overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. First, introduce myself. And second, we go over what actually is sports science. And then I'll show you all some of the stuff that I worked on this semester, including player development stuff, and just like some of the technical projects that I worked on. Then I'm just gonna like wrap it up and talk about like some of the biggest things that I've learned, and then open it up to any questions from there. Yeah. Introduction. So, like I said, my name is Riley Etten, and I'm originally from Raleigh, New Jersey, which I like to refer to as the greater Philadelphia area. Currently a junior here at Clemson University, and I am a mathematical sciences major emphasis in statistics. Back in March, I joined the Clemson Olympic Sports Science program as an intern in the baseball analytics department, and my focus is on pitching analytics. There's two other groups. There's also hitting analytics and database management, which I can talk about if someone's interested in. But yeah, enough of me. Let's get into what y'all came to learn about today. So what exactly is sports science? It's a very like popular field these days, and it pretty much uses a generic term. So I threw my best shot at coming up with a definition of it. And I said that sports science and analytics is the use of data to drive player performance, especially at the college level, where it's like with sports, you're recruiting out of high school and you're kind of stuck with these guys for 4 years. It's not like the NFL where it's like if a player's not performing, you can just cut them and like sign a new free agent. You kind of have to maximize the talent that you already have on the roster. And with the improvement of modern technology, it allows teams to have more access to player information than ever before. So whether that comes from like a game, a practice, weight room, like nutrition stuff, anything can be useful in terms of gaining a competitive edge over your opponents. And while actual results matter, I like to say that analytics provide the whole story and help predict future outcomes. There's a lot of pushback on like the rise of data analytics in sports, especially from like older generations, because the idea is that, you know, the game is played on the field and not on the computer. And I understand that, you know, at the end of the day, like results do matter, but in sports like baseball, a lot of the stats that we use are like expected outcomes, which means we're not taking into account what's actually happening, but rather like what we expect to happen. And I'm sure everywhere, I just realized like half the text is getting blocked off by this thing down here. Oh. See if I can just... There we go. That should be
Should be way to hide that.
Yeah, that should be fun. But I'm sure everyone in here is familiar with the concept of regression to the mean. So like, here's an example. So say we have a pitcher go out there and he goes like 4 games without giving up a run. Obviously he performed really well. He's going to have an ERA of 0. But if we take his expected ERA and it comes back as like 8 or 9, then we don't really like think that he's actually going to continue to perform well and he's going to fall back down to the mean. And the idea is essentially that you can only outperform how you're expected to perform for so long. And that could be a game, a month, or even a season, but you're always going to fall right back to where we expect you to be at. And an important thing that I wanted to note that involves both the collecting and analysis of the data. Most of the time when people think about sports science, they just think about the end product, but a lot of what goes into it is collecting the data and making sure you're getting actual valid results. Because if you're collecting data and it's not correct, you're just going to be reporting on a bunch of useless information. So I wanted to get into a little bit of like how we collect data here. If you guys have ever been to the baseball stadium, behind home plate, which is the little black box right there, that's called the TrackMan system. And we use the TrackMan system to collect all our player performance data. And what's pretty cool is that almost all college baseball teams in the country use the system. And while we don't share like the practice data, every team does share like the in-game data with each other, which makes it good for like scouting reports or like evaluating players out of the transfer portal. And TrackMan tracks every single pitch thrown and every single swing of the bat, so basically every single play that happens in the stadium. But just how much information do we get? The answer to that is just about everything you could ever want. For each play, we get the flight metrics, which include speed, spin rate, how the ball is breaking, location, the time spent in the air, and where it lands. We also have the swing metrics of bat speed, exit velocity, and hit angular direction. And we can also see who is in the game and their exact location on the field with the X and Z coordinates. Basically everything you could ever want to know about a given play, and our database dates back to 2021 and contains over 3 million plays, which I think is pretty cool. And most of this is automatic, but like some of the stuff is tagged manually, like who's on the field and like what type of pitch is thrown. That's all done by one of the student managers on the field. So big shout out to them. And now I kind of want to show just a couple of examples of like some of the reports we worked on throughout the semester. I need to make a couple clarifications for here. One, all the stuff Meta show is not actual data. I'm not allowed to show you guys real players for confidentiality reasons, sadly. And two, if I'm about to throw a bunch of statistics and terminology at y'all, so if I don't explain something good enough, please tell me to stop talking and I will do my best to try and explain it. So yeah, this is an example of what like a season by season report would look like. So this is a player, we're comparing how he performed in 2023 to the 2024 season. Stuff plus, strike percentage, whip percentage, and WOBA are all different versions of baseball statistics that the coaching staff really likes a lot. These are all found using SQL queries. And to break these down, stuff plus is basically like how well your pitches are moving and how well they're separating from one another. Strike percentage is how often you're throwing the ball for strikes. Whip percentage is how often you're getting the batter to swing and miss at the ball. And WOBA is a way of calculating on base average, but like it's weighted differently. So like home runs count for more than like a blue single. In these charts, you can see that I think it's pretty intuitive that green is good and red is bad. And we show like where they rank in the NCAA percentile, which I think is pretty cool. And then down here, we just make our notes on like the biggest things that stood out to us. So for this guy, for example, we noticed that his command was a lot better than it was the year before. And we noticed that his walks were the biggest thing that was still holding him back. And this chart to the right down here is an example of the regression to the mean thing that I was talking about earlier. So what this is the whip percentage over like the number of pitches he's thrown throughout the season. So if you look in the beginning, he starts at 0 and then he spikes all the way up to like nearly 50%, about like, I want to say like 100 pitches in. But if you notice like over time, he slowly starts to come back down to the NCAA average. So like in the beginning of the season, you're going to see a lot of high variation in players, but like it's not going to, like we never expected him to like sustain this like over time. Like obviously he had to come back. And even though he did end up a little bit above the NCAA average, like it's still very close to it, which is what we expected. So this is an example of like a pitch location plot and pitch movement plot. So what we can do is break the thing down even further to like the certain pitches that a player is using. So we have here usage, stuff plus, and then the same strike and CSW percentage from the last slide, and also the average velocity. These are all once again done using like SQL queries. And then this graph to the right here is it's a pitch visualization plot. So basically it shows how much it's moving vertically and horizontally. And when I say like vertically, I don't account for gravity in here. It's induced vertical break, so it's how much the spin rate is affecting how much it's dropping, instead of just like how much it would drop anyway. And the different colors represent the different types of pitches. And you might ask why there are 4 colors and 3 pitches there. And that's because we have a model that like automatically tags pitches. So sometimes, even though the player only might actually throw 3 pitches, it's disclassifying them. But like this is the same pitch right here. It's just getting tagged as 2 different ones in our model. So that's where like a communication with like the student managers comes in to like see what the player is actually throwing. But most of the time the model is pretty accurate. And then again at the bottom, just like the biggest notes that we have from the location stuff that we see. So this is an example of what an opponent scouting report would look like. So we'd like to break things down into like the 5 big categories, which is what the pitches they're throwing, how hard they're throwing them, how the ball is moving, where they're releasing the ball, like what their motion looks like, and just what the grade we have for that pitch is. And then we have the pitch visualization plot again down here. And I'm going to try and break down these numbers right here. I already talked about break and horizontal break. VAA is vertical approach angle, which is the angle the ball takes if it's coming over the plate. Extension is how far away from the mound you're releasing the ball, and release height and release side is like where, like the height you're releasing the ball from. And I just think it's pretty cool. This is pretty good for like the coaching staff to like give the players the most like updated information on like what they should expect to see from guys out there on the mound. And then this is another like version of like a opponent scouting report right here, but we haven't put them down by batter handedness. And this strike plot is a little different than the one I showed before. This is what it looks like from behind home plate. And what this is for, it just gives like the coaching staff an idea of how like guys like to attack batters, because in baseball, you kind of like want to switch up your arsenal based on if you're facing a lefty or a righty as a pitcher. And this gives an idea of what they should be looking for. And we also like to make notes about like where the pitch is performing best and like what they should be looking out for. And again, just more SQL queries down here to determine the KPIs. And then lastly, this is broken down by pitch, like the count of the pitch. And then we have more strike zone plots down here. These strike zone plots are really useful to determine like where a guy tends to throw a pitch, so you can be better prepared for like, oh, look, the ball is going all the way down. It's probably going to be a curveball. And like for this guy, for example, like he throws his fastball mainly up towards the top of the zone. So like be ready for the high fastball. And then other like useful notes that come out of this. For example, every time this particular pitcher was behind in the count, he tended to throw a fastball. So if I'm sitting in a 1-0 or 2-0 count, I'm going to be looking for a fastball. And on the other end, like if I'm behind in the count, you notice that this guy almost never throws a curveball. So it's just like basic stuff like that, that like you would miss in an actual game, but it helps you get prepared as a batter. And now I just want to talk about some of the technical skills I've gained during this internship. So different resources that I use throughout the same SQL, which I will say was important because I just saw on every single slide that was just mainly SQL stuff. Also used a little bit of Python, R, and then Tableau. Tableau is the thing that created all of those like pitch visualization plots. Now I like to say that I had a very basic coding background prior to this internship, because I think a lot of people, when it comes to like data analytics, think you need to be like the most advanced person in the world because you see all these like super prodigies out there on the internet. But I had really never coded outside of any of my classes before, prior to starting this internship. And even then, like I would say that like coding in your classes is different compared to coding for like an actual job, because like in your classes, they're going to give you a very specific way of solving things. In my internship, they were just like, yeah, figure it out. And then this is an example to show you like how little of a background you need in coding. This is my first project I ever worked on. This is like a basic SQL script to recreate the BAPIP statistic in our database. The formula is right there. And then, like I said, I never even used SQL prior to this internship, and this is the first thing that I worked on. And obviously, like, it's like, you know, it's not the most advanced stuff in the world. And as time went on, I did end up getting better. This is the most simple thing that I worked on, but you can develop your skills. You just have to be willing to like put the work in. And then I put a note at the bottom that the process does not end here. And I'll talk about that a little more in the like the biggest lessons that I've learned. But if I learned one thing from this internship, it's like you can always dig a little bit further and try and find a more optimal way to do things. And I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. But yeah, now I just want to talk about the biggest lessons that I learned throughout this internship and then open it up to any questions. So the biggest thing I will say, and this kind of goes for like any math related field, that communication is everything. You're going to be working with people that don't know math like you do. They aren't as comfortable with numbers as you are. Like for example, we work really close with the coaching staff. They get paid millions of dollars to coach baseball guys. They do not want to read a long list of numbers every day. My boss told me on my first day of the internship that it's like, if you can't present your information within like 30 seconds, then you just wasted your time. So getting things down as simply as possible and being able to effectively communicate with all different types of people is very good. Then I also like to say that your information is only good as you communicate it. Kind of goes along with what I just said, like you can create the most valuable thing in the world that will guarantee us a national championship. But if you can't get that in the coaching staff's brain, you're not going to do anything. And then lastly, this is another thing my boss tells me all the time. Your job is to present ideas and not solutions. You don't get paid millions of dollars to coach baseball. These guys do. So show the problem, but like don't act like you're above them. And then next, I would say don't be afraid to think outside the box. And that goes along with what I said in the last slide. Like the more information you can find on something, the better. It's easy to like get the thing and then stop, but like coming to the coaching staff with a bunch of numbers is not as good as coming there with like, hey, this is the statistic, this is what we found, and this is why we think this is happening. And then all of our meetings also start with like, what do you guys want to work on this week? So it's like the best analysis can come from ideas that like nobody was thinking of. And yeah, like a lot of times you're gonna try stuff and it's not gonna work, but some of the most important things that we found have just been from like random ideas. And then lastly, I just want to note that teamwork is everything, which is the thing like every professor always says. But like you're gonna be working with a team, people, not even just like other analysts, but like we have student managers in the thing, and we have coaches, and like everybody has to be willing to play their role in order for this process to work. But yeah, that's all I have. If anyone has any questions.
Yeah, so do you have a feeling for how the transfer portal is affecting how they look at these analytics?
I think, well, so I did get the chance to start over the summer, so I got to work with a little bit of the transfer portal stuff. And I think it helps a lot because like before, we didn't really have as much information on other players, but like now we can go in and like pull guys like entire careers. So I think it helps a ton.
Did you say that, you can pull their game careers, but not necessarily the practice?
Yeah,
right?
we don't have the practice information, but like in-game performance does matter a ton.
Do you know if any teams share practice information?
They do not.
Yeah. I think that's probably a bad idea. When you had that plot, over home plate of where the pitches were.
Yeah.
Does that count when the batter was hit by the ball?
It does, yeah. That's every single location.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Well, thanks. This is my first time learning about sports analytics, and it's very interesting. I don't know enough to ask really a technical question, but it does have me curious about how the information gets used. It sounds like you were saying that you present the information to the coaches, and then they'll use that to inform how they coach the players.
So kind of like the rough process is like they'll come to us and be like, hey, we want to see like this certain statistic, or like we want to see how this guy's performing. Then we like chop up all the information and send it back to them. And then like they'll use that and go from there and make their decisions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm also just amazed at how much.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. It's like,
Can other players, like, can they really take advantage of even those little things? I mean, it seems like you have to be of such an ability to make such precise corrections.
yeah, I think like it's more of like the coaching staff, like with their decision, like. I don't think the players necessarily care that much about their own analytics, but the coaching staff like definitely does, I would say. That's more of where the fine tuning stuff comes in.
Thank you.
Is this getting used to actually change how pitchers? pitch?
Yes, sir. So like, for example, we have certain guys where it's like, we'll report back and it's like, they're not throwing hard enough, or like this location doesn't work. So then the coaching staff takes that information and gets them in our biomechanics lab and like starts to work on their throwing motion.
So what percentage of the NCAA schools actually use some form of analytics?
I would say 100%. Like almost everyone uses the same system that we do, but I think almost every college in the country has some form of like analytics department for their baseball team.
Well, how far down does that go? I mean, that's probably not true at Division III, right?
That is probably true. I'd say Division I is definitely like more common than others. It's kind of just like with anything college sports, like the Division I teams have more money to put towards stuff like
Right.
this compared to like the smaller schools.
So my follow-up question to that is, whoever was doing this first probably had an initial advantage.
Yes.
Then everybody starts
Yeah,
doing it,
wait.
right? And so the playing field is even. So how are they combating that, right? Because I want somebody's gonna wanna have that next advantage, right?
Yeah.
Now everybody's using the analytics and
Yeah.
all this out here. Do people look at better ways to do this?
I would say like there are like 3 schools that do it like way better than everyone else. Wake Forest was like the original one who started all this. And they were like big with like all the pitching biomechanics that we're trying to recreate right now. Like they were the first ones to do it. And they have like a whole team of like data staff. Most of us are just like interns and like we have one data guy. But I think it's like, it comes down to like the size of these departments, because like if you have more paid people, you're gonna have more people to come up with like better ideas. And like Wake Forest and Creighton and Iowa all have like massive stats, like the staff's like devoted only to this, I would say.
Okay, cool.
Can I ask another question? So I think there was a slide where you showed us something, maybe it was probabilities of certain pitches depending on the counts.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Something. So, oh, yes. So now I'm wondering like what the kind of mathematics is behind the strategic decision.
Yeah, so are you asking like what we would tell to the coaching staff, like based on these numbers?
Oh, I don't know if this question is out of scope, but I'm wondering like what.
Or is it like how does it
mathematics they
calculate
use
it?
to
Yeah.
decide like what pitch to throw, like the strategic side of.
Gotcha, yeah, so that definitely is like on a player by player level, I would say, like, This guy, for example, only has 3 pitches, so like not that many options to choose from. And with baseball, like depending on like certain counts, you want to throw the pitch you have like the most control of and like the most comfortable with. And most guys just tend to be more naturally comfortable with their fastball, like locating it because it doesn't break as much as the other pitches. But I would say that's definitely like on a player by player level and like coaching decisions.
Okay, so.
My
so football-
curveball was always deadly accurate because it never broke it off.
So football, the manager, the coaches have the headsets on and they're talking to guys in the booth who are writing the numbers and telling them when to punt and when to go for it and force down, like game time. In baseball, I don't pay attention to it as much, but I would assume that the coaches are not quite that in tune of it.
Yeah,
Or are they?
I would say it's like a little less than football, like we kind of go into games with these things, so like we present all the stuff before the game and like even the players out in the field, like they have like pocket cards and like where they should be standing on defense and everything. But I don't think like that much is changing like within game, unless it's like decisions that
And
like.
no one's telling the coach like, okay, in
No.
punt because the analytics has a
Yeah.
2% higher chance or
It's
this.
more of just like the coaching staff is on their own at that point, but.
Well, what do they do? So usually the catcher like determines the pitch.
Yes,
I mean, do they debrief the catcher before the game and,
I imagine so.
yeah.
Now, do you have, for pitching, do you have data, I know we're gonna talk about this, about whether, the pitcher's out of the stretch or the windup, but I would imagine that some of these pitches, there's gonna be a big difference if someone's able to take a windup or not.
Yeah, I mean,
Some more,
are you talking about like extension stuff, where it's like with the way they release the ball?
yeah, well, like, if a player's in first base, your pitcher's gonna.
Oh, yeah.
pitch down the
Usually it's a
stretch.
stretch, right?
And I would assume
Oh, yeah.
for some pitchers, it's not gonna be much difference, some of it's gonna make a huge difference.
Yes. Yeah, I
I don't know
mean,
if that's
we can break it down, like, we're working on currently adding like base runner states into our database, and that'll help answer that question, I feel like. But not too much of that right now,
I think it does make a huge difference. That's why nobody pitches out of the stretch if there's nobody on base.
yeah.
So Riley, what are you going to do next? Are you thinking about continuing this kind of work?
Oh, yeah, so I'm coming back next in the spring semester and working with the team
I think
for
I
the
will-
actual season, which I'm looking forward to, because
Wow.
I got the chance to shadow people like last spring when they were working on like these scouting reports and all that, and I was like, man, I really wanna get in. So I'm super excited to get to actually work like during the season, because like, while all this stuff was fun and I enjoyed it a bunch, there was a lot of like setting stuff up so that we like are good to go when it's like the actual game, so really looking forward to getting out there. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the pitchers, they're working on pitcher mechanics. I assume the hitters, they're working on hitter mechanics.
Yes, sir.
Are there people who are looking at sort of more broad strategic kinds of?
We have one guy, we have one like, he's like fully focused on like building out models, and then the rest of us are kind of like pitching and hitting analytics.
I have one more question, and you may have actually answered this earlier in your talk, but I missed it. How did you get into this?
Okay, so that's actually a really good question. So I came to math club one time actually when I was looking, Dr. Brazil was speaking and she mentioned this like internship thing that I had never heard about. So I sent her an email after the thing was over and she got me in contact with the director of like the Olympic Sports Science program. And then I had actually missed the application deadline at the time, but he ended up giving me an extension because Dr. Brazil referred me, I believe. And then interviewed from there and got it. So
Okay.
shout out to the math club for getting me this internship.
Right. So, if you hadn't had that experience, where would you have found out about this internship?
I think, well, there's actually, funny enough, there's a flyer for it out in the hallway right now, but, yeah, I think there's like tons of opportunities to get involved with the Clemson Olympic Sports Science program, like they do post like internship stuff like every semester, I feel like fall, spring and summer. And so there's tons of opportunities to get involved, if somebody's looking to.
Does anybody here know, does Clemson have something on their website that's kind of a central for students internship bulletin board kind of thing?
There is like the UPIC stuff, but this is like a non-UPIC program, but I believe there is like a Clemson Sports Science website that you can go to, like specifically for internships, if that's something you're interested in.
Do you ever talk to our graduates who work in major league teams?
I
We
would-
have at least 2 who currently do, and 1 who did an internship with the Reds. I don't know.
Yeah, I would love to, that is the goal one day, but I haven't.
Have you been in contact with them?
I do not think so, no, but I have a couple more years to make a decision.
Yeah, last year in the play, not this year, last year in the playoffs, I think we have one graduate who works for the Rays and another one who works for the Rangers, and they met in the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah.
It's fun to-
You know, is it Connor Moore and Alex Harriman, I think?
Alice, I know,
Yeah,
and then
Alex, yeah.
John, who's a PhD.
Oh, yeah, John, I remember, I saw him on LinkedIn.
Nicholson.
Yeah.
I like his LinkedIn page, he said he's
Yeah,
fulfilled
Tampa
his
Bay.
dream of, not a dream working for a major league team, but in a different capacity than.
But yeah, we have like a lot of guys, like not even just from like this department, but the Olympic Sports Science department in general, all over the MLB. Like we had a couple guys just get a ring with the Dodgers this season, which is pretty cool. So a lot of Clemson people out there. My former boss, actually, Jason Avedesi, just left Clemson to go become the director of like sports analytics at the Cleveland Cavaliers. So a lot of Clemson people out there.
All right, anything else? Well, let's thank him again.
Thanks for having me.
Did Alex ever get a ring?
Alex did get a ring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I was super jealous. He posted it on his LinkedIn and sent it to the group chat. I was like,
Well, everybody, happy Thanksgiving. We will see you in 2 weeks. I'm gonna send an email around about the mapping if you're interested in that. We need more volunteers. Other than that, travel safe, have a good Thanksgiving. And thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir.